Okay, welcome everyone. We'll make a start. Is the volume about right? Can you hear me in the corners? Yeah? Okay, well, thanks for being here rather than at Splendor. This is all really good. My name's Michelle, this is Andy, and we'll be your tutors for the next 13 weeks. We are recording this session for the online students, so the swivel there will just follow me wherever I go. So it might get the backs of your heads or something, but it's literally only the online students, the external students who will be watching it. So it's not like it's going on YouTube or anything like that. It shouldn't be a problem. But see me if you do have an issue with it, and we'll just stick you somewhere really far away. You can sit anywhere you like. I know on the registration it said 307 or 308, but as you see now, it's a single area. So when you come in, sit wherever you like. I encourage you to sit with lots of different people. I know most of you are secondary students here, which probably means you know a few people really well, and you probably don't know other people at all because they're doing different teaching areas. So it's a good idea to get to know different people in the group, because it's still a good way to go through your career and have contacts in different teaching areas as well. Okay, so we're going to do a few things today. There's a bit more talking from myself and Andy than other weeks, but we'll get you through that. To begin with, I'd like you to do a survey for us. Now, the reason for this survey is that we had to assume what you have got, what you haven't got. You know, I'm seeing a lot of devices, so that's great. We assumed you had access to devices. It seems you do. We're assuming you've got access to internet at home or wherever you work, and adequate streaming and all that. So we've had to assume all this, but we need to check that that is the case, and if it isn't, to support you in different ways. So that's what the survey's about. It's about what you have access to, and also what you already have done with technology and so forth. So there might be some questions where you think, no idea what they're asking me here. That's fine. That's just to say you haven't come across that, and we can just see what your experience with IT is. So if you'd like to go on to Blackboard for this unit, EUB101. And there will be a link to this survey on Blackboard, or you could just type that into Google if you find that easier. surveymonkey.com/r/58yjvly, whichever way you want to do it is fine. Andy and I will come around if you can't get into the survey. There's a few questions to go through, so I'll just let you do that and stop speaking for a little bit. Okay, I think a lot of you have finished, so I will keep talking. If you haven't quite finished, just finish off while I'm talking, okay? But I will carry on for the people who are ready to move on. So just to recap, the reason for that survey was so that we know who you are, what you know, and so on, so that we can adjust our teaching if we've assumed something different to where you're at, okay? So thank you for doing that. So welcome to the unit. You'll find it's perhaps a slightly different way of learning to a lot of the units that you've done in your degree so far, because I know most of you have done a few years of study at QUT, and you've got some ideas of how units work and what happens. And the first thing you'll notice is that we haven't got lectures in this unit. And it's largely about your attitudes towards using technology in education. So it's not down notes necessarily. It's not a fact-packed unit. So what we're going to do today is, we've already done the survey, so I've crossed that one off. We're going to think about digital learning and digital pedagogy. You must be reasonably familiar with the term pedagogy by now, yes? Everyone nod or not nod? So what would you say pedagogy was if you had to describe it generally? What's it about? Yeah?
Ways of teaching, I guess?
Yeah. Absolutely, it's the ways of teaching, isn't it? It's all the planning that you do, the techniques that you decide, the classroom management that you decide. It's everything about teaching. So that's all we mean. And when we say digital pedagogies, obviously we're talking about using technology in the learning of every subject. That's basically where we are. So we'll talk about what is a creative inquiry session, and we'll be using the acronym CI. That's what we mean, creative inquiry. What do we mean by that? What is it? Quickly run you through the Blackboard site. I know you are familiar with Blackboard, but just to point out where things are in this unit. Give you a quick overview of the assessment, because I know that's one of the first things you do when you start a new unit. It's what are the dates, what do I need to do? Okay, right, I'm on top of this. We'll do a bit of getting to know you. As I said, some of you are very good friends probably, very familiar with one another, but you might not know a lot of other people in the class. And then we'll do a topic about 21st century learners, because that is in the curriculum. It's something you all need to be across. We'll do a bit about the Learning Forum, which is something that will happen next week. I'll explain that to you. And we'll create a digital portfolio, or at least we'll start to create it. You might not finish it in the session. That's fine. Now, you'll notice this space. You might have been put down in a class as 307 or 308, but you can sit absolutely anywhere. And I'd encourage you to sit with different groups of people in different sessions if you want to. The second assessment task is a group task. So it might be that you want to figure out who you want to work with. You might already know, that's fine. So move around. You can move the furniture. If your laptop runs out of charge and you need to plug in at the wall, feel free to move the whole table or whatever you want to do. It's entirely up to you. There's some couches. Some people like to lounge about on couches while we do this. That's entirely up to you. We're fairly open about how things happen in this. You can bring food. We're the 9 to 12, so hopefully it won't be too big a meal break if you didn't have your lunch with you. But obviously clean up after yourselves. A lot of the walls are writable surfaces, so we will be getting you to do some work on the walls. So this barrier here is also a writable surface. Obviously not the curtains themselves, but all these whiteboard areas are writable surfaces, not the tables, just the walls. So we will be using it. And we have some breakout rooms. Have you been into the new E-block building? Yeah, and on floor 2 at the back, have you seen there's a series of small rooms that have blackout curtains and they have green screens? You might not have seen that because you have to push the button to get them. So when we do activities later on, not so much this week, if your group wants to go over and work in there, you've got, soundproof room, you've got the ability to black out screens if you're doing photography or audio recording. So you're welcome to do that if you can. There are lots of classes in this unit, so if you're talking to a friend who's in a different class, they might have done things slightly differently. That's fine, because we like our tutors to have autonomy. The only thing we will insist on is that everyone covers the same points, and that will be what's happening. But the way in which it's done might be a bit different. As always, feel free to shout out at any point, right? So if you've got any questions or any concerns or anything you just want to ask, just shout out, and Andy or I are happy to answer. We'll keep it reasonably fluid like that. Right, now this unit, it doesn't usually run in semester 2, but this is a transition unit. So I'm guessing most of you are secondary initial teacher education students. Can I get a show of hands for anyone who isn't secondary? Not secondary. Okay, so that is very, very heavily secondary. So you're early childhood? Okay, early childhood, and you're secondary? Yep. Okay, good. So quick show of hands, what are the main teaching areas we've got in here? What should we start with, Andy? Who's in the science teaching area? Not many. Who's in HPE? Okay, that's usually quite a big cohort. Maths? This could be either of your teaching areas, 1 or 2. Okay, English, history, HAS or geography. What am I missing, Andy? Guys, what am I missing?
IT, is there any?
Any
IT,
double degree
technology.
IT people? Nope. All right, so it's mainly the usual teaching areas in secondary. All right, so early childhood people, make sure you talk to Andy and myself and make sure that you understand how what we're talking about relates to early childhood, because we'll mainly be talking about how it works in secondary, but it does all work in early childhood. All the ideas we're talking about work across the years, so that's a good thing to bear in mind as we go through it. Do we have any exchange students in this class? Oh, okay, from... Lovely, welcome. So again, make sure you talk to us if there's anything different to how you work in Norway, anything that's, a bit troubling. Good, so I think that's everyone. Is anyone else not secondary and not one of the things I've described? All right, that's good. So let's just talk about what we mean when we say technology. So this unit is talking about any information communication technologies, computers, mobile devices, wearables, robotics, and we're looking at ICT across the curriculum. So this means that what we're talking about, all the examples, should fit in whichever teaching area you're talking about. Now, some things are more relevant for certain areas and less relevant for others, and that's fine. But if you're not seeing how what we're doing applies to, say, maths or whatever your teaching area is, make sure you talk to us and we'll try and give you a one-on-one example of how that might work. Okay? So, as I say, the Australian curriculum refers to ICT, which is why we'll use the word technology or ICT interchangeably. We mean exactly the same thing. It doesn't make any difference. And I'm sure you've looked at the Australian curriculum a number of times through your degree, and there is a section that talks about ICT as a general capability. And this is it. Now, I'm not expecting you to read all of that, but we've just highlighted this particular bit. It's responsive to ongoing technological developments. It's resulting in ways that students construct knowledge and interact with one another. So, in this unit, we will be looking to use technology as a tool to help students to build and construct knowledge, right? So we won't be teaching you specifically particular technologies. Any reason why we won't be teaching you and we're wanting you to work as groups to figure it out? Can anyone think why that might be a philosophy? Yeah.
Practical for when we are teachers, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you know how quickly technology changes. Just think about how many mobile phones you've had and how the operating system changes with that. If somebody had sat you down and taught you how to use your first ever mobile phone and said, right, that's it, you're done for your entire life, wouldn't really work, would it? The thing is, technology will be changing. It's up to you to have the ability and the confidence to say, all right, here's a new piece of software, here's a new something. I'm going to figure out how to use it. And what are the ways in which you do that? Do you Google it? Do you ask a friend? You know, there's lots of different ways. Do you just play with it? Do you experiment? And that's what this unit's all about, getting you to create those skills in yourself so that as you go through your career, which might be 40 years, whatever comes out, whatever's useful, you have the ability to spot how it can help create knowledge in your subject and use it in your teaching and learning where applicable. Right? That's basically the key message that we're trying to do. So let's just get a little bit of feedback from you about how you're feeling. I know a lot of people have very different attitudes to technology, and you might be one of those people who loves a new gadget, or you might be one of those people who does not think technology has a place in your classroom. And all of that is fine as an initial starting point. So let's get some attitudes from you. If you hop on your device and go to app.gosoapbox.com in Google or whatever your navigator is, in Chrome or in Firefox or Safari or whatever it is you use. Just type app.gosoapbox.com and then enter that number that you see there, 487-730-573. Have you used Go Soapbox before? No, not really. So Go Soapbox is a polling software. There's lots of different ones, and you might use it in your classroom, or you might use something similar to get some feedback from students, because there's quite a few of you, and we will try and talk to you all individually, but sometimes it's easier to get things back this way. So we're just going to get some opinions from you about what you think about using technology in classrooms. So ignore the confused and whatnot button. Just go through that and answer the questions that they have there. And you can have a look through what other people have put if you want, but it's mainly thinking about what you are feeling at the moment. All right, so it's just a few words. It doesn't need to be a huge essay on it. So we'll move on. Okay, so the reason we will be talking about your attitude to technology quite a lot, you might think, well, why is that relevant? A lot of the research talks about the fact that it's your attitude as a teacher to technology that's very important and influential about whether you will use it in the classroom. So you could have lots and lots of skills, but if you don't have a belief that this is going to help learning, then you're not going to use it, and quite rightly so. So that's why, as we go through, we will get you to be examining your attitudes and how you feel about a particular task and a particular thing. Not everything might be something you'll use, that's fine, but certain things you might say, oh, I can see how this would work really well in history, or I can see how this would work really well in whatever it is, okay? And remember, the Australian curriculum does require you to use technology. So if you are one of those people who's less interested, you still have to come to terms with it and be able to use it where it's relevant to the learning. Okay, so I'm just going to address a few attitudes that sometimes come up in this unit quite early on. And you've all been on professional experience, I think, yeah, pretty much. So you've got some experience of schools. Obviously, you've been through school as a student as well. And some of you might be thinking, well, I don't know why we're doing this unit, because the school I went to, they didn't use any technology and we didn't have any technology. So this is a waste of time. Why are we even doing it? And also people say, well, it's all just, fancy stuff and it doesn't help the learning. It's just a gimmick, it's just a distraction, and I don't think it helps learning. So we're just going to examine a couple of those ideas. Just because you have technology in a classroom, it doesn't automatically mean good learning's happening. It's what you as the teacher do with the technology. It's what the activities are that will either result in deep learning, or it will just be, a waste of time and a distraction. So it's very much what you do and how you do it. And you probably can't read that article from where you're sitting, but that's talking about a classroom in Shanghai where they're producing excellent academic results, no technology at all. So technology is not a magic wand that suddenly makes good learning happen. It's the teacher. The teacher is the one who's creating opportunities for good learning. Okay, so it's not a magic wand. So to address the thing that the schools don't have technology, yes, you're right, some don't. At this point in Brisbane, and probably most rural schools as well, there's a huge gradient between schools who are very heavily invested in all these ideas at one end, and at the other end, the schools who have absolutely nothing. There's nothing changed in the last 50, 70 years, and you don't know what school you'll end up in. However, you need to have the toolbox, you need to have the skills so that if you do end up in one of these environments, you are able to work with it, because in these schools they expect every member of staff to be on board with it. Also, if you are at the other end, it doesn't mean that your children, your students, should miss out on the learning that is available with technology. So later on in the unit, we will talk about what you can do if you land in a school and there's very little. How can you still keep your students using these sorts of ideas and having those opportunities, which they'll need for employment and so on, just being a 21st century citizen. They will need all these skills. How can you do it? So we will do that a bit later on. Everything we use is deliberately agnostic, which means it works across all different platforms. So some of you are on Macs, some of you are on PCs, some of you are on tablets, some of you are on a combination of the two. The things we're talking about should work on everything. So if you end up in an iPad school, this should work. If you end up in a Mac school, it should work. If you end up in a PC, Microsoft environment, it should work as well. Okay? There's only 1 week where we'll look at emerging technologies, and that is where it will be specific to the hardware that's purchased. But that's only 1 week, just to show you the scope of what will happen. So far, so good? Yep. Okay. So, creative inquiry. So we won't be having any lectures. It won't be a case of you sit in the classroom and you scribble down lots of notes. And the reason for that is the deliberate model, the deliberate underpinning model that we've got. So this represents a lecture scenario where you've got the sage on the stage transmitting knowledge to the students. Now, because of the outcomes of this unit, as I say, it's very attitudinal, it's very much about how you think about things, how you problem solve, because that's a big thing about using technology in teaching. That sort of model it's not going to work for us. So rather than that, what we're going to do, we're not going to do that transmission stuff. We're going to stand with you. You're going to work collaboratively. We'll give you some challenges and some issues and some things to work on. And then you are going to work in groups to solve these challenges together. So it's getting that idea that your colleagues are a very big resource when you are trying to learn something new. So everything we try, some of you might already have some experience in it, some of you might be very adept at that particular thing, others of you might be thinking, I have no idea what's going on. And the idea is that you work together and help one another. Even the people who know exactly what's going on with the technology need to be challenging themselves to think about how does this fit into my 2 study areas. All right? So it's not a case of sit back if you already know the technology, there's still things to be learning. So that's the model we've got. We've got Andy and myself working with you and standing behind you, if you like, posing a problem or an issue or a challenge, and you guys working collaboratively. And you'll feel different things. So because it's problem solving, there's not a single answer. Each of you might come out with a different solution, and they're all valid, they're all good. As you're going through finding the solutions, you might go through a range of emotions. Some of you might think, oh, this is a bit boring. Some of you might think, oh, this is great, I'm really enjoying it. Some of you might think, I'm really lost. You know, there's all sorts of different emotions you might go through, and that's fine, all right? So the whole point is that you will learn through going through these activities, and it might be a little painful at times as you're doing it. And it should lead to moments of enlightenment when you suddenly have these great ideas eventually and lots of solutions, okay, leading to the eventual prize. So this was a quote that one of the students wrote in the feedback from one of the previous deliveries. And they're saying, I found at times you wouldn't approve our ideas, which was frustrating, but it was useful in extending our learning, and I'm grateful for that. So that's really how it goes in this, in that you'll have an idea. It's not expected to be the perfect idea straight off. And Andy and I will be questioning you, we'll be encouraging you to think about improving it, making it better. And that's the process that you go through. So don't feel bad if you say something and we challenge you on it. That's really what we're here to do, all right? To challenge your thinking and have those conversations. So just to be clear, we're here to activate your learning and the role of digital technologies. We're going to provide you with opportunities, and we're going to encourage you to work collaboratively. That is our way, that's our pedagogy. What we won't be doing is giving you step-by-step instructions, and we've already discussed that's because we don't want to make you the sort of people who can only learn if somebody is there instructing you, all right? So that is deliberate. We won't be giving you lots of facts, and we won't be, saying, here's a list of 10 good iPad apps to use, because of course they will all change, even before you graduate, let alone when you're in the workplace. What we will do is give you the skills to identify good iPad apps and to realize when things will be useful. So we will not be basically teaching you Excel. We will not be teaching you Word. That is not the purpose of this unit, all right? They're all good things to know, but that's not what we're doing. So we'll be using digital technologies for getting students to do content presentation, visualization. So if you think about most of your subject areas, being able to visualize the content and the learning can be very important. Diagrams in science, 3D modeling, history, ways of representing things that aren't just text. So that's important in most subjects. We'll be getting you to use video, audio, multimedia, etc., etc. We'll be working on the communication and collaboration, which again is part of the Australian curriculum. And we will also be looking at content production, but that's only one small part of what the technology will be used for. Okay, so I'll quickly run you through the Blackboard site. You'll find that the slides won't be up until quite late, but you're never expected to print them off and bring them and write on them. Okay? So don't worry if they're not up in time for you to print them. You don't need to print them. That's not the way it'll go. You will be wanting to take notes, but you will be taking notes on the activities you do, right? So it'll be what you do that you take notes on, not necessarily what I say in most cases. So the assessment task will not change. This is in stone now. We are not going to change anything. So anything that you suddenly hear about in week 4 or 5, don't think we've created it. This is all set at the start. You could read it now. It's not going to change. We will obviously add more resources depending on what we feel you need, what help you need. As I say, the slides will be available. You're not required to print them. There will be a video which will be for the online students. If you've come to a session, a face-to-face session that week, you don't need to do anything with the video. All right? You do not need to look at the video at all. It's if you couldn't attend the face-to-face session. And if you are absent, everything is on Blackboard, so you don't need to email us to say, what have I missed? Everything is on Blackboard. You can see in week 1, we've got every single task that we're going to do, and there's help sheets and so on, because some people are doing this on their own at home, and they're having to do the activities on their own at home, so there should be sufficient description for you to go and do it on your own. But it's much easier if you can come in, because you've got that collaboration and that ability to work together. Okay, any questions so far? Okay, I'll just run through the Blackboard site. Might just switch on to my laptop to do that. Okay, so I'm not expecting you to be able to read everything necessarily, but you've got it on your laptops in front of you. All right, so you've got the announcements. I think you're all familiar with what the announcements are, yeah? And that'll be there. Do make sure you're keeping up to date with it. Then you've got the unit details, the usual unit outline. I won't go through that in any great detail at this point. Assessment, the assessment tasks are 60% for the first one and 40% for the second one. And all the information is in the assessment section under the folders for assessment 1 or assessment 2. Okay? So I'll go over that in a bit more detail in a moment. And there's information about academic integrity and late assessment and so on. Given that you are current students and you've been through a few units, I imagine you probably are across that. Okay, then there's the My Grades section where you'll get your results, and there's the Tools section. So I'd like you now to go to the Tools section on Blackboard and join our Blackboard group. So if you hop onto Tools, and then Groups. Tools and Groups. And you should see a series of groups. The second one down is Monday 9 to 12, which is our group. So if you click on Sign Up, because there should be a Sign Up button. Mine's already signed up, so it doesn't have a Sign Up button. And then sign into that group. Shout if you're having any problems doing that. Okay, that's great. I can see all those names coming up. All right, so by joining the group, you're getting access to a group area that just this group will use on Blackboard, all right? So scrolling down to the bottom of that group, you can see there are group tools, there's a group discussion board, there's a group journal, but the important thing that we'll be using is the group wiki, right? So if you'd like to click on the group wiki, and you should see a screen that looks like this, and that's where the role is. So every week when you come in, I'd like you to click on the group wiki and the role, and then just put your initials next to your name. If your name's not on there, you can add yourself at the bottom, but just pop your initials next to week 1 and your name. And do that every week that you come in, not now, obviously. Okay, unless you've got really long initials, you've probably had time to do that. So remember to do that at the start of every week when you come in. Now, did you notice that you could all edit this at the same time? So what's the software that we're using here? It's like Excel, you're right. It's the same function as Excel, but could you all be working on the same thing in Excel necessarily? You can set it up like that, but it's a bit wobbly. Do you know what it is? It's a Google Doc, yeah, it's a Google Sheet, okay? So with Google, and we're going to go over this a bit more in future, have you used Google Docs? Yeah? So what's special about Google Docs? Everyone can edit it at the same time. And do you need to save? Auto saves, right. So this is the spreadsheet version of Google Docs. If you wanted to use it like Excel, lots of people could use it and they could update it. That's not why I'm using it. I'm just using it as a role. I could have used anything, but it's just a quick and easy way of doing it. All right, so that's the role, and you will find in Blackboard that on the left-hand side, it might not have turned up for you yet, but on the left-hand side, you will see Monday 9 to 12 will turn up in the navigator for you. And then you can find the wiki in there. You can just click on there and find the wiki in future. It might not have turned up yet. It sometimes takes a few hours to turn up. Okay, so moving on, each week it'll say week 1 and it'll have all the information, and then week 2, week 3 and so on. The video will be uploaded there afterwards. Then we've got the unit overview and the learning resources. So if you haven't already, make sure you have a good look at the unit overview, because that's giving you some of the background and ideas behind what happens in this unit. So do make sure you have a look at the unit overview. That's the learning schedule, so that's what we're planning to do each week. If you do need to change classes, there's a section there that talks to you about how you can change classes. If you happen to need to miss the Monday session and you want to attend one of the others, then email the tutor. If there's room in the class, then you're welcome to attend. Obviously, for fire safety reasons, we can't just have a really large number. But if you happen to miss a Monday because you were ill or whatever, then you are welcome to attend a different one just for that week, if necessary. Where to get help, how to study as an online student, which doesn't apply to you. So have a look through that. Now the learning resources, there's a series of links that I will link to in each week, but if you can't remember where that link was, they'll all be listed here. So for example, the help with the portfolio is here, which we're going to do later. The QT readings, which you're probably familiar with, is here, and we do link to them as and when. Okay. Should get there. There we go. And all the readings are electronic, so you're not required to buy any books for this. So you know our systems are a bit slow. They do get you to log in a million times. Let us know if you have any trouble getting in. But essentially all of the readings are available online, and they are linked to in the particular weeks that we need them. Okay, so that's the Blackboard section. Is there anything there that you're not sure of, or anything that you're not happy with? Or any questions generally? Okay, so I'm going to hop back onto the iPad, and you'll be able to use this when you're presenting in Assessment 2 later on. Okay. Right, bit more talking and then we'll have a bit of a break. So, assessments. If you just want to listen up to this and then we'll have a bit of a break. So, assessment 1, there's an individual portfolio that you're creating, and that is a reflection on 3 of the activities that we do in the first 6 weeks, right? So as you do the activities, there aren't any today to reflect on, but from week 2 onwards, make sure you are taking notes of what you did, how you did it, which menus you went into, what it was you did, how you went through the thinking around creating whatever it was you created. Make sure you're taking lots of notes. Lots of ways to do that. You could obviously keep a notebook and jot things down. What you can also do is grab your phone, and as you do things, just do a voice memo, or even a video if you want to, right? So you can actually just talk to your phone nice and quickly and record things as you go. It's up to you how you want to do it. Some people like to write. That's good as well. All right, so you will be doing activities. You will be writing up 3 from the 6 that are possible. For assessment 2, it will be a group activity. Assessment 1 is an individual. Assessment 2 is a group activity. You will be in groups of 3 or 4, and it will result in a presentation in week 13. And you will also have a 1-page reflection that is an individual piece that you will do, talking about your part in the group work. All right. So the actual sheets are all on Blackboard, so I won't go through everything. But just as a bit more detail, assessment 1, you do a cyber safety poster, which we'll do next week. That has to be uploaded in your assessment. And then part 2 is 3 of the activities written up for 350 words, which means you just have to select the important parts, right? And that can be quite an interesting thing to do, to write in not many words. And then part 3 is an 850-word reflection on your overall learning in the journey. So how do the activities compare to your experiences of learning at school? What were you comfortable, least comfortable with? Why? And talking about the learning forum, which will happen next week as well. All right. So that's assessment 1. The full details are on Blackboard in the assessment area, if you want to have a look at that. Assessment 2, you're going to create a professional development session. So you've been in the staff room, I'm sure. You've seen that sometimes they have staff meetings, and sometimes they have staff development sessions where they'll teach them something about the curriculum, or people will do a showcase of their learning. So you're doing an imaginary showcase of learning. So you're pretending that you've done this really cool lesson with students, and you're telling them about this lesson. You're telling them what happened and what the learning was, and how you organised it. And then there'll be an individual written reflection on that. And you present in this session in week 13. Okay, full details on Blackboard. Any questions on that at the minute? Okay, let's have a little break for a few minutes. So let's have a 10-minute break. It's 10 o'clock now. Let's have a break till 10 past. And you can go and get a drink or whatever you need to. And we'll continue after that. Okay, moving on. Okay, if you can just listen up. You'll like the next section. It's all about talking.
Hi everyone, welcome back.
But you do need to listen first.
Sorry about the volumes. Probably our volume is a bit low. So can anyone hear? Over there, can you hear our voice?
Okay, guys? Right, what we're going to do is have a little getting to know you session. So we'll talk a little bit about who we are, and then we're going to get you to mix around the room a bit, because we don't want you just to be talking to the people you already know, all right? It's fine if you do want to work with them, but we also want you to gain a good appreciation of what other subjects are doing and what other teachers are doing as well as part of this unit. So, a little bit about me. Well, my name's Michelle, obviously, I've told you that, and I came from England in 2005, where I was teaching secondary, ICT and science. So that's my background. And since being here, moved into the tertiary environment and educating early childhood, primary and secondary units. And I coordinate this and a lot of the science units. And I also coordinate the BEd primary programme. I don't know, what else do you want to know about me? I have a dog called Dumbledore. Andy.
Hi, my name is Andy Yai. I've been a primary teacher for 10 years. Then I teach in university as a teacher educator for another 10 years. You don't have to guess how old I am, right? So my kids are actually probably older than you. All right, so self-exposed, the age. Do we talk about these as well? But anyway, I mainly teach in mathematics education unit, but in primary bachelor education program, not quite for secondary. I do have strong interest in mathematics and STEM subject in general. Recently, my interest is all about makerspaces. Hands up if you heard about makerspaces. Great. And hands up if you are interested. And those should really come to me. And I'd just like to forecast, without Michelle's permission, I know this is just coming up here. Tuesday, tomorrow, in the library, there's a course reserve area. I'm putting up a 3D printing show. All right, so there are 3D printers in there, and I printed a bunch of things. And I hope if you have time, drop in to visit Tuesday. So essentially whole day.
That's great, Andy.
Right, great.
So Andy's our leader in 3D printing, and in one of the weeks in emerging technologies, we will bring in a 3D printer, and you can have a look at some of the things that are easy to make. Easy, would you say? Some are easy, some are more complex. And you can maybe do something like that for your project for assessment too, if you wish to. It's entirely up to you. There's lots and lots of choice. You don't have to do that at all. Okay, so what I'd like you to do now is go and find somebody you haven't spoken to before. If you've spoken to everyone, then just go and find somebody that you haven't spoken to in a long time. And go and talk to them about, it can be about these things, your interests, fact about your family, your favourite animal, your favourite subject at school, your favourite place to be, or you can just have a general conversation if you don't want to talk about those things, okay? So stand up, walk across the room, let's have you guys going down there. Okay, good. Let's carry on then. All right. As the weeks go by, I will encourage you to sit with different people, work in different groups, get to know different ways of thinking from different subjects, all right? So do feel free to sit at different seats each session if you want to. It's entirely up to you. Right, we're going to do a little activity thinking about 21st century learning and what is your role as a teacher. Because if you think through the ages, the role of the teacher has been to deliver knowledge. Right? And that knowledge has to go from your head, which is very knowledgeable, into the student's head. But now that we're into a more knowledge economy where people can look things up just in time, the skills that are privileged, the skills that are sought after in society and by employers are more about what you do with the knowledge and facts. How can you apply them? How can you solve problems? How can you be creative and so forth? All right? So as secondary teachers or early childhood educators, it is important that we take into account how the world is changing. Now, there's also another reason you need to think about how the world is changing, because the Australian curriculum in the general capabilities and the early years framework also talks about 21st century learning. And if you did the pre-reading, you should know what these things are. So you probably can't read that in the Australian curriculum, but you can see there's 7 areas that should be attacked in every learning area. So it doesn't matter whether you're a maths educator, an HPE educator, science, history, English, it doesn't matter what you are, you should all be doing all of these things. You should all be developing students' literacy, numeracy, ICT capabilities, creative and critical thinking, personal and social capability, ethical understanding and intercultural understanding. So for today we want to focus on the information and communication technology capability and the creative and critical thinking in what we're doing. Just for the people who are doing early years, I know most of you are in secondary, but the early years framework talks about connecting and having a sense of well-being, can't speak, and being an effective communicator, all right? So these are curriculum documents that say whatever area of teaching you are in, you should be addressing these skills and capabilities. So what we want to do is think about life and work in the year 2037, when children in prep, so children who go to our students over here, will graduate and go into the workforce. Now, if you're teaching secondary, it might be a bit sooner, but these are the sorts of children that you are preparing for a life of work and being a global citizen, all right? So I want you to think about what the world might be like in 2037. Now, if you then think if that's when they're graduating, how long are they likely to be in the workplace? 40 years? Yeah. So quick maths, Andy. What's the year when they'll be retiring, do you think?
2087.
Right. So you are teaching people who will be in the workforce in 2087. Right? You think about what changes have happened over the last 10 years, over the last 20 years. I mean, we've only had iPhones since 2009. We've only had iPads since 2011, was it? So there's a lot of things that have happened in the last 10 years in your lifetimes. Andy and I grew up in an era before the internet, right? So there's a lot of things that have happened in the last 10 years, 20 years, 50 years. And if you think forward to 2037 and then forward to 2087, did you say? Yeah. There will be a lot of changes. So what sort of jobs might your students have? What might the world look like? Right? So I don't mean will it still be spherical, but what sort of things will be happening in the world politically, economically, etc., etc. What is society organized like? So what skills might these students need, right? What are the actual skills that you need your students to have? Not necessarily an encyclopedic knowledge of facts, yeah? So learning skills, literacy skills, and life skills. I'll leave that on the board. And then I want you to think about, are you educating them for this world? So I want you to get into groups of approximately 3. It can be 4, it can be a bit more, whatever you want. And then with the pens on the table, I want you to find a piece of wall and brainstorm these things. What jobs might they have? What might the world look like? And what skills might they need? All right? So grab a piece of whiteboard or a piece of wall and go and do some maps, some mind maps or some dot points, however you want to do it. Have a think about this. Do you want to go here? I'll put the side screens up and they've got a bit more room. If you just want to listen up for a second, how can you record what you've done? How could you record what you've done? Because you've written on whiteboards, what could you do? Yep, you could take a photo.
It's actually a good idea to take a picture.
So if you want to take a photo of what you've done, do that. Okay, just settling down for a second. So you might want to take a photo of what you've done. And then what I'd like you to do is go around the room and have a look at other people's boards, because obviously there's no correct answer. Nobody knows what's going to happen. So have a look around the room, go around the room and see what other groups thought of, okay? So stand up, have a little tour around the room. And yeah, you can photograph them if you want. There's no right or wrong answer in this. I don't know. Nobody knows.
So everyone, you can stand up and look around what other people are saying. Maybe you can find something in common or something different.
Okay, then if you'd like to take your seats, please. All right, so if I can have your attention for a minute. Okay, listening up. So, as we go through this unit, we're going to explain our pedagogies and our thinking quite a lot. So a couple of things there. You were working very physically in the real world, right? But if you then wanted your students to do that and capture it into the virtual world, just the photograph and then into whatever document they're working in, right? And I've been to classrooms where people are working like that. You've got the physical presence, the fact that you were all standing together. It made the communication a little bit better, I think, than if you were all staring at screens. So there's a time for staring at screens. There's a time for standing together and writing. But then you can bring it together back into virtual if you want them to be using that in an essay or something that they're submitting, all right? So think about that. So did you see some other ideas around the room? Some commonalities, some differences? I was going round. One of the themes that came out to me was this idea of adaptability, that your students will need to be adaptable because it's an unknown future. At the end of the day, none of us know what is going to happen. I don't know, Andy doesn't know, probably none of you know, unless you've got a really good crystal ball. So we are educating, you are educating teenagers or young people for jobs that we can't even imagine at this point. So it's more than just filling their heads with content knowledge, right? It's far more than that. That's your job, to prepare them for this uncertain future or this unknown future. So in conclusion, you've got to get them getting those critical, creative thinking skills, the communication, the collaboration skills. All of these things will be important for the world moving forward. We don't know exactly what it will look like, but they will be important. And think about how technologies can help students with these skills, because that's one of the aims of this unit, to understand how students can use technology as a tool to solve problems, and also how it can level the playing field. So how students with certain areas of disability or something like that, how they can be helped through technology. That's the other thing I want you to think about. Okay, any questions or comments from that activity? So as I say, a lot of what we do isn't fact-filled, it's more thinking through what are we doing, what's our role as a teacher, what's my role as a teacher, what are my beliefs as a teacher. All right, we'll move on then. So there's a learning forum next week on Thursday at 12 o'clock in W201. And what will happen is there will be a panel of practicing secondary teachers who use technology, and they will talk to you about what they do. And we want you guys, all of you, to come up with questions for them, because it's not just a case of them telling you things, it's what do you want to know about technology in education, right? We will get 2 student volunteers from the whole unit, so if you want to volunteer, do email me on that address, and the student volunteers will be putting the questions to the panel. So you might all have a really good question, but you might think, oh, I don't want to ask it in front of everyone, it's really embarrassing. So the student presenters will ask the questions of the panel, okay? So I want 2 volunteers. You need to be free to do the question prep, because we'll get everyone to write some questions in, but the student volunteers will then collate those questions and be ready to present them on the Thursday thing. So I will need to have you available either Wednesday or Thursday morning next week if you want to volunteer. So far, so good? Yep. So it's all about figuring out what teachers do in the real world with this stuff. So I would like you now to start thinking of some questions that you could ask the teachers. So if we go into week 1 on Blackboard, you will see near the bottom there is a preparation for the learning forum, and there is a link, questions for panel, which takes you to a Google Doc. And what's special about a Google Doc, do you remember? Everyone can write in it at the same time. So if you'd like to put in your name and your question, if you have any resources or links about it, that's great as well. If not, not. And you're thinking around what and how are you using digital technologies in your teaching? What are the challenges? And what is a 21st century learner? Those are the sorts of things they'll be talking about. But you might have additional questions about using technology in your subject. So have a chat in your groups, and then you can put in as many or as few as you want. But let's get started with a few questions. Okay, great. I can see a few people still typing, but most of you seem to have got some questions in. Obviously, you're fine to revisit this. If you have a brainwave while you're in the shower or wherever, and you want to drop back in and add your question, you feel free to do that. And the student presenters will collate the questions. So hopefully yours will be in the collation, but we will take a subset of all the ones that are in there at the moment. Okay, and there will be time for you to ask the panel questions as well. We will do live questions on the day based on what's happening as well. All right, let's move on to the last thing for today then. We're going to talk about the portfolio. Okay, so if you'd like to all look at me for a minute while I explain what's going on. Okay, in week 1 on Blackboard, you'll see there's several links to a portfolio creation, but I'll just run you through what it's all about verbally now that we're together, and then your job will be to build this portfolio. Now, who's used a portfolio before in their studies? Yeah? What did you use it for? For art. So that's a very good use of a portfolio. And why a portfolio, do you think? What was the point of it?
Just to keep all my stuff together, just have a collection that I can show to people.
Yeah. So it's to keep your work together, and it also shows the progress that you've made, doesn't it? In that you came in and you started doing certain artwork, and then as you got better and better, it shows that progress. So that's what a portfolio is all about. This portfolio is an electronic one. We're going to create it in Google Sites, and it's designed to capture your learning through the course. So by the time you get to the end of your course, you've got to do the Teaching Performance Assessment. Have you heard about that? The TPA? So that is something where it looks at your understanding of teaching and your teaching philosophy across the whole course. And if you have collected together things in your portfolio throughout your teaching studies, then it's easier for you to then do the TPA at the end. So that's what this portfolio is about. It's a place where you can keep examples of teaching, keep lesson plans, keep reports from PECs or your reflections from PECs. It's things like that that you can refer back to year on year and then culminate in your final thing. Okay, so there are step-by-step instructions on how to do this. So I'm just going to jump into the portfolio help very quickly to show you what it looks like, and then I'll highlight a few of the things. So I'm going to go through things quite quickly, not expecting you to take it in just right this minute, but there's a step-by-step help that you will go through, and it literally says, now you need to click on this, now you need to click on that, now you need to do this, now you need to do that. Do you see how step-by-step it is? All right. So that said, I'll now whiz you through a few of the ideas really, really quickly. I think I'll just switch to my laptop because it's a bit more Google friendly. Now, this can be created on anything. So it can be created on a laptop or a PC or a Mac device. It doesn't really matter. And if I just go down week 1, you can see there is the help with the Google Sites portfolio there. And we are looking at the section creating the portfolio here. So if you click here in the first link, there's a little video which you can watch at home, and that tells you the rationale for why you have a portfolio, right? And every student in teacher education will create this portfolio and use it. So that's a little video that tells you the rationale for why you are using it. Then the second link here is the help that I was just showing you. And the third link is a summary. So if you're quite good at using Google Sites and you just want to do things really quickly, it just tells you the shortened version of what's happening. Okay, so here's what you will be doing. You will be creating a Google sign-in. Now, who thinks they already have a Gmail account? Quite a few of you. If you already have a Gmail account, then you already have a Google account. So you don't need to do the step that says creating a Google account. Make sense? Yeah? So if you already have a Google account, if you don't, then the help tells you how to create one. Once you have your Google account, when you're on the standard Google screen, in the top right corner, that's where you sign in to your Google account. Okay? So there I'm already signed in, and I've got a couple of logins because I've got some teaching logins as well. And you would just go up there, it would say sign in, you sign in with your Gmail and your password. So far so good? Once you are signed into Google, you have access to all of these extra areas in Google. So I've just clicked in the top right corner where there's 9 dots, and it's showing me all these things that I have access to in Google. Have you looked at that before? Not really? All right. So have a look either now or when you've got time. Now, there's a couple of things I want to draw your attention to. One is Google Drive. Who's used Google Drive before? Okay, so what is Google Drive for the people who haven't?
Isn't that where like your Google Docs automatically save into, like a cloud system?
Yeah, so it's a cloud storage area. So it's just like the hard disk on your laptop where you've got folders and you've got files, but this is in the cloud, so that means you could log on to it from any machine. You could go into the library, log on to your Google account, and you'd have access to all the files that you've put here. And as you rightly said, it's mostly for your Google files, for your Google Docs, for your Google spreadsheets, for your Google portfolio that you're going to create in Google Sites as well. So this is mine here, and you can see I've got all sorts of folders here, which I just created by doing new. It's just like creating folders on your hard disk. And I've got various documents here, some of which you'll recognize because I'd linked to them from Blackboard. Now, I'll give you an example of what you are creating. This is the finished version to show you to start with. So your Google portfolio, it can look like anything. You can put whatever colors you want, I don't mind. I'll just go to the version that you would see on the web. So you'll have a banner at the top. It can have any sort of font or any sort of colors. You can be as creative as you want. The first page will be about me. I told you I had a Labradoodle, didn't I? There he is, that's Dumbledore. In yours, you'll have a picture of you. I just didn't want to put a picture of me in. So there'll be a picture of you and a bit about why you want to be a teacher, something very professional. Imagine you were showing this portfolio to an employer or a prospective employer. That's the sort of thing. This is me. This is examples of the work that I've done. This is me teaching. This is my lesson plans. Yeah, it's that sort of thing. Then at the top, there's a navigator. So you'll have one that says unit-specific work, and yours will be EUB101 for this unit. And in this section, you can put bits of work that we do in the unit. So you could put your cyber safety poster, you could put your videos that you create, you could put notes that you want to keep, anything you want. It's your area. You can put whatever you want in there. So there's some pictures, some videos, all that sort of thing. Then there's some pages that you need for the rest of the course. We're not going to use them in this unit, all right? So the rest of it, we're not going to use in this unit, but you will use them in future units when you finish your degree. So you'll have one section called APSTs, which are the EITSL standards, EITSL Professional Standards for Teachers, and you should hopefully recognize some of this: planning effectively, teaching effectively, managing effectively, assessing and recording, and professional conduct. And these are all pages where you will store evidence of how you do these things. Then you'll have a section called Professional Learning Conversations. Every time you go on PECS, you have professional learning conversations to make sense out of what you did and what you learned. And you can have summaries that are stored here. So when you go from one PECS to the next PECS, you can build upon your knowledge and skills rather than completely forget what happened and start again. And then the last section is TPA practice. And you've got section A, B, C, and D. Nobody talked to you yet about the TPA? They will. It's a fourth year thing, but they will start to talk about it fairly soon. And most of you third year? Yeah, most of you are third year. So you will hear a lot about the teaching performance assessment. It has 4 sections. So there's a teaching rationale, which is section 1. Then there's sections about how you met certain professional standards. You put that out and you explain it and you show evidence and all the rest of it. So they will explain all this to you, but you'll start doing practice for it leading up to your final QTPA, and that's where you'll store it. Okay, so this is roughly what it looks like in the finished, but it can, you can format it any way you want. So now I'll very briefly show you how you go about doing it. So let's go from the Google page. I can go from the Google area, make sure you're signed in, and it's called Sites, S-I-T-E-S. Remember, all of this is in the step-by-step instructions, so don't worry if you're getting lost. That's not a problem. So you'll go to Google Sites and you'll go to the plus icon. So with Google, they often put a little plus in the bottom right corner if you're looking how to add something. Create new file. And that's what it'll look like. Once you've added your new file, it's literally like using a word processor. You're then just clicking in and typing text. Simple as that, all right? So if my page title was Michelle's Portfolio, I just click in and write that, etc., etc. Then when I want to put text in, I can just click on text box, or I can click on the layouts. If I wanted to put images in, I could click on images. If I wanted to put files in from Google Drive, I could click on from Drive. So you see how easy it is. It's really user-friendly. So let's say I wanted to put some text and a picture in. I could click on a layout, and it just says click to edit text. Here is some text. And then I could put a picture in there, or if I didn't want a picture in there, I could just delete it. Yeah, so very, very straightforward, and that's what the instructions will take you through. When you want to add a page, you just go to Pages, and you click on the plus. And so you remember I had all those pages called Eitzel Standards and this and that. So I just click on New Page, call it Unit Related Work, done, and it will create a new page. So you can see it's very, very straightforward in what you're doing, and the help will talk you through all of that really slowly, starting with creating a Google account. And if you already have a Google account, you just skip that stage, go to the next stage. All right? Any questions about that at this point? Okay. So when you've finished, or as you go, this is like a save. What you do is you click on Publish, and you give it an address, and it'll be your name. It'll suggest what to put in the help. It'll be something around your name, and then you'll click Publish. So that's like saving it, okay? And then you can put restrictions on who can see it on the internet, and the help will talk you through how to do that as well. At the moment, it doesn't matter if it's open, because there's nothing sensitive in there at the moment. So if you don't put permissions on at this stage, it doesn't matter. But as you go on to writing your PECS reports and things, obviously then you'll probably want to lock it down, make sure only you can see it. Okay, so what I'd like you to do then is have a start at doing this, all right? So it's 11:22, have a start at doing it. Andy and I will come round and help you if and how you have questions and problems. So you're going to week 1. You're going to creating the portfolio, and it's the second link where it says help files can be accessed here. You click on here, you get your help files up, and that should talk you through doing the whole thing. And we will come and help you. And then we'd like you to finish it for homework, if you like, homework. So if you have any problems, don't fret, don't stress, just come to class next week and we'll help you with any problems. But if you don't have any problems, just try and get it finished.